This is FYI on your TV, brought to you by Hometown News. I'm Kathy Botham. I have got two retired teachers here with me. One of them was my history teacher, Rick Coldrey, and Blake Seward, your retired teacher over at SFDCI. Yeah. We are here today to talk about something so special, but let's get it started. Blake, you started the Lest We Forget program 30 years ago.
Yeah, it was all about at our cenotaph here in Smiths Falls.
Right.
Standing at the cenotaph, and they were reading out the honor roll. And I remember standing there going, I don't know anything about them. You know what I mean? Like, when they read off the names of the men and women. So many names. And as they're reading off the names, my thought was, what do we really know about them? Like, do we even know when they died? Do we know where they died? Did they die? Were they killed in a battle? Did they die of disease? You know, whatever it is. And I thought, I'm not sure we've actually done a very good job of this remembrance and commemoration in this crossroad moment in Canada's history. And so I was unsure what to do, but I thought, I knew I had a great uncle who was killed at Passchendaele. So I ordered his file at Library and Archives. And back in the day, you had to go to Library and Archives on Wellington Street to look at a file. And I remember sitting there looking at the file and thinking, this is magic. Like, what is inside? It is the life of somebody who gave everything for the country, for the cause, if you will. And I thought, wow, wouldn't this be a really interesting project to get students involved with? And so I walked down to the cenotaph, copied down the names, and ordered the files at Library and Archives, booked a bus with Healy's, and went to Library and Archives, and watched students skip their lunch, watch these students just enter this world of historical magic as they would work to unpack what happened to these men and women. And it just so happened that the Deputy Minister, Ian Wilson, came into the building, came into the room that we had booked, the conference room at Library and Archives. All of this has changed now at Library and Archives. And he was quite taken by the engagement of the students. And I was asked a week later to go down to the Library and Archives and have a coffee with him. And he said, would there be a way for us to work to create an education program for us to be able to then turn and finish the digitization of the 620,000 Great War file sets? And so I was seconded to Library and Archives to build this program. Wow. And the idea was that no one would own it. Unlike other national institutions like archives, the British Archives, the French Archives, or whatever, where you have to pay to access these files, the notion or the thought at the time was, how can you charge families to access the files of loved ones who made the supreme sacrifice? Why can't we treat this like it's a national treasure and everybody should have access to it? And the second thing is that no one should own it. So I don't own it, I don't profit from it. It is just something that is for the country to be able to use, and it's just boomed. Wow. Kind of thing, yeah.
Wow, so when did you start taking students over to France?
Oh goodness. So this trip that we just came back from,
right,
I think was the 28th or 29th time that we've taken students over.
Wow.
And we don't use a tour company, we just know hotels. We know how to work it so that it's affordable for students, and whatever it costs is whatever it costs us. So it's not a money-making venture or anything like that. But it gives students an opportunity, if you will, to put boots on the ground. They've done all of this research. And when we were just over, it was, for so many of the students, it's very emotional for them. Like, there's a lot of crying, there's a lot of weeping, there's a lot of reflection, and
well, when you make that connection,
you totally make that connection. And there is this closure piece. They've done all of this research work, and then they get to stand beside that soldier's grave, and as we all gather around the soldier's grave, the student is able to say, we're going to spend some time with this guy or this nursing sister, and I'm going to tell you about his life, and I'm going to tell you what happened to him. For the most part, because Canadian soldiers don't come home, they are buried overseas. It's many things. One, it's probably the first time that anybody's ever come to visit them. So they've been in foreign soil for 110 years, or if it's the Second World War, 85 years, as it is for Ted Coldrey. No one's really come over because back in the day, families had to be able to afford to be able to cross the Atlantic and make their way to these oftentimes remote cemeteries. And the other thing is that the student is the expert. No one knows more than the student on that particular soldier because they've done all of this research. And so there's an empowering piece to all of this.
Wow.
So
Wow.
yeah, it's so we're probably, I don't know, we've probably maybe 1,000 kids or something like that.
That's
800
amazing.
kids that have
That's
gone over.
amazing.
Yeah, it's been great.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, you have an uncle that was in the war, too. Uncle Ted, your Uncle Ted.
Yeah.
Maybe you can tell us a little bit about your uncle.
Oh, thank you. First off, I'd like to show you a picture. I put a face to the name, Cameron. Okay, Uncle Ted. His name was George Edwin, but they called him Uncle Ted, and actually my brother was named after him. And he was an Ottawa boy, and he went to school in Ottawa, and he grew up, and he was going to study to be an engineer. Okay, but unfortunately, obviously, the war started. World War II started, and so he enlisted in 1940 into the RCF, and he became, through his training, he became a pilot. And one of the airplanes that he did learn to fly was the Lancaster. He became a Lancaster pilot, and he was sent over to England 1 year before he died, almost to the day. He went on June the 4th, 1943. He was sent to England as a Pathfinder pilot. He was a Pathfinder, so the Pathfinder was the people that led the raids. And so he was actually, he was sort of the elite, to be honest with you. And so Pathfinders were supposed to finish 45 missions, which is 45 missions, mainly over enemy territory, including over Berlin. He did 52 missions. His 52nd mission was the last one. And so what happened is that his mission was to lead 128 aircraft. Okay, and he was the Pathfinder, and his mission was to drop flares on the railroad tracks at a town called Trappes. T-R-A-P-P-S, Trappes. My French is not, but that's how it's pronounced. And so he led these 128 aircraft, dropped the flares to light up the railroad tracks, because this was on June the 3rd, 1944. As you know, D-Day was 3 days later. They had to stop as many German troops from getting from that point down to Normandy once they discovered that the actual raid had taken place, because they did not know. It was all very top secret. So what he was trying to do is he stopped soldiers from jumping on trains and going down to Normandy to fight against the Allies. And so he did. He dropped the flares. There were 127 aircraft followed him. 15 Halifax were knocked down that night, and 1 Lancaster bomber, which was Ted. And it's a long story. I won't get into the details of the German pilot, but he was shot down by Messerschmitt. He was a night fighter, shot him down, and he was unable to make the U-turn to return to Gransden Lodge in England. He wanted to get back, obviously, and crashed at Le Boissy-de-Caux in France. And as Blake has already said, the aircraft, it was scattered. It was, quite horrific, and 5 of the 7 members of that crew died. Ted was one of them, and so his body was found, according to what I've been reading. I don't know. Sometimes I get different interpretations from reading stuff, but they said his body was found about 200 meters away from sort of this part of the crash site where the cockpit party would have been. And he was, at that point, he was buried immediately, okay? And they weren't able to identify him. And after the war, he was identified by people from Great Britain that came over and they were identifying people. And he was identified and he was moved into another cemetery. And then eventually, even after that, he was disinterred. What's the word? He was dug up and buried in the place where he is today at Le Boissy-de-la-Calle. And so that's where he is. And if it wasn't for Blake, I never would have visited him. And of course, in that trip,
You went 20 years ago.
yeah, 20 years ago, I was not even old then, you know. I mean, 20 years ago, but I still, I still remember it was so emotional. The townspeople, they whippersnipped sort of the outline of what was there. They thought they whippersnipped it. We went to into the town hall, and they showed a PowerPoint presentation of the final flight, and they served us a lovely banquet. And I will close with this point. At time, one of the most parts of that was the move. I met a lady. Her name was Madame Rabot, R-A-B-O-T, and Madame Rabot was a little girl at the time that the plane came down. And I have a picture. I don't know if she's on that plane. Their kids were actually on the wings of the plane. They were just playing on it, and Madame Rabot was one of them. And so I had a chance to talk to her, which was challenging because my French was not very good, and her English was not much better than my French. So we were going back and forth, but we were communicating. But the thing is, as Blake would say, the people of Europe, you know, they were beyond grateful to the Allies, and particularly the Canadians, for what they did to save them from the tyranny of the Nazis. And that's what I could not get over, how well the people at Le Boissy treated us. Simply because I didn't do anything, I'm just a Canadian, but your uncle is our hero.
Right.
And I said, thank you. And so they treated us so well, and I was humbled beyond, I could not be more humble. I just came here to visit. I didn't do anything, but so it was a fantastic trip, and
Again, it was a connection. You are the nephew of their hero, you know?
You're absolutely right. Absolutely right. Now, I'm not sure if I inherited his heroic genes or not. I haven't had an opportunity to be tested the way the men and women they were tested beyond belief, and he passed the test. And my understanding is that from talking to older relatives, he was very well loved. He had a brother who was my dad, and actually my dad went to sign up to RCF. He's older than Ted, but the good news, bad news. The bad news is, yes, the good news will take you, and you want to be a pilot? Yes, I'd like to be. No. Bad news, you can't be a pilot because your eyesight is too poor. So my dad probably survived the war because his eyesight was so bad, and so he never went overseas. He served here, like many did. And so thanks, Dad. You know.
Yes.
Anyway.
And then this past year, there was a wonderful discovery that you.
Yeah. So it's crazy, right? So this is a 20-year-long story,
right?
So in 2005, when we went over, they had there was still parts of the Lancaster plane in the forest.
Yeah.
And as Rick was saying, like they cut this path through the forest, and then where the main part of the Lancaster rested after it had crashed, they had cut out from the ferns the shape of the plane. And I don't think that was lost on anybody. As you walk this path of shoulder-high ferns, and then it opens up and you look at the shape of it and you realize, wow, this is the Lancaster bomber. That was in 2005, and they actually gifted you and Ted 2 small pieces of the fuselage from the plane. And as Rick was saying, like, you go into this village. So Le Boissy-de-la-Calle is about an hour and a half southwest of Paris, and And on the night of 2nd, 3rd June, it was a softening up of German positions to be able to knock out railway hubs, road junctions, and whatnot to really kind of impede the Germans' ability to move once the Normandy campaign and D-Day on 6 June 44 would take place. So it was really about how do we try to create as many obstacles or problems for the Germans to be able to move. And so that was Ted's mission, was to bomb the railway hub at Trappes, which was about 40 minutes from La Boissière-École.
Yeah. Sorry.
No.
Obviously tried to turn around and make the U-turn to get back, but then the pilot hit him, and then he had no.
Yeah.
He had to crash land. Right. There was no option. He couldn't. It was over.
So, Kath, we before we went over in 2005, we'd spent a year doing research and providing Frédéric, who was the historian in Europe, with this is back in the day before there was digitized files or anything like that. So we would have to order files, scan the files, and then send those files to Frédéric in France, all of it to then culminate with us going over to Europe in 2005. And Frédéric, actually, what he discovered was that the Messerschmitt pilot who shot down Ted's plane was still alive. Yeah. And so Frédéric went to Germany, interviewed the pilot as a part of the research that was being done. And then in the village of La Boissière-École, a monument was erected in 2006, a year afterwards, but based on the idea of the Lancaster plane crashing in the village. And in the slide deck that I gave, Rick was talking about the photos, and Madame Rabot that was there. I've included those photos of her on the wings of the crashed Lancaster. So that's all 2005. And then in January of this year, we were contacted by Fabien, who is, I believe he's the deputy mayor for La Boissière-École, the village, and wanted to know if I was alive, wanted to know if Rick was alive, because it's 20 years later. And we, yes, we are. And he said a gentleman was walking through the forest near the crash site, saw something shiny, and under leaves and whatnot, uncovered it, and it was Pilot Coldrey's watch. It's a 1944 Rolex Putnam watch, and he said, "How do we get this back? Yeah. How do we get this back to the family?" And so we've had these conversations back and forth really since January about how do we work this? What do we do? Would you want to come back over? And if so, we'll work out a trip. But the genesis of, okay, let's go back. Let's do a tour with some students. We'll focus on Normandy campaign. And Rick and I we have not had a chance to talk because I just got back. The cool thing was, over and over and over again, as the students are doing their soldier research, and we're up at Benet-Semer, we're at Brockville-Sur-Lez, we're down north of Caen, we're looking at the beaches, we're south of Caen. We spent 12 days looking at Normandy campaign issues, over and over and over again. The relevancy of Ted Coldrey in the softening up of a German position on the 2nd and 3rd of June was relevant every day, because everything is connected. This idea that what happens because it's before D-Day doesn't have any real relevance or impact to D-Day is wrong, is completely wrong. Everything is absolutely connected, and the success or failure of a mission has an impact on D-Day landings and whatnot. So it was really cool to just see the relevancy and the depth and the breadth of the work just expanding itself until it finally went south to the village of La Boissière-École. So on the last day, we were in Dieppe in the morning, and we had some work that we had to do, Dieppe and Dieppe Canadian Cemetery in the morning. And then we drove south for about 2.5 hours. We got to the village of WWII about noon. And then for the next 7 hours in the village, just as it was in 2005, these celebrations, they fed all of the students, they fed everybody that had arrived. There were Canadian flags everywhere.
Do you want to mention the video conference, if you don't mind?
Yeah. So we went to the church. We went to the church, and we had a ceremony at the church, and we had a student who had to do a presentation on Ted Coldrey there. And then we went to the forest, and they have done so much work since we were there in 2005, because what they figured out is that when the Messerschmitt shot the plane down, the plane essentially broke in two pieces. The cockpit section where co-pilot Kelly and squadron leader, which is really what he should be called, squadron leader Ted Coldrey, where they were, the cockpit kind of breaks away from the main part of the plane, crashes. They are both killed. And then the plane, the rest of the Lancaster, continues on for about 400 meters and then crashes on the edge of the forest. And so there is debris in that 400 meters. And so when we were there in 2005, they had found pieces of the fuselage that they then gifted to Ted and Rick, Rick's brother and Rick. But since then, they have found all kinds of pieces of the Lancaster debris within that 400-meter span, and they have now created a trail. There's a monument that's there, and there had to be 250 people there.
Wow.
Like it wasn't, this just wasn't an event. This was a commemoration, a remembrance, a celebration. And like I said, when we arrived, everybody was fed, and then in the evening, everybody was fed again. And then we had a video conference for the presentation of the watch. Fabian and his crew at La Boissière-École, the work that they have done is, it's outstanding. And so Rick and Jackie came to my house in Rideau Ferry with my wife Anne, and it was all worked out that we would then beam them in live to the village of La Boissière-École so that they could see the PowerPoint presentation of all of the work and research and the discovery, not just of the watch, but of all of these other parts and components of the Lancaster bomber, culminating in the presentation of the watch. So, and I don't know how you want to do this.
I know, because you have.
I have the watch here, and we haven't rehearsed, and Rick has not seen it.
Rick has not seen it yet.
And so, Rick, how do you want to do this? Do you want me to just?
Yes, I think that would be the best. Simple. Keep it simple. Just hand it to me.
Okay.
One of the things that I found out interesting is that Fabian sent a picture of the watch, and I said that it was in the ground for 76 years.
Yes.
Jacques found it and held on to it for about 4 to 5 years.
Yes.
So it's been actually 80 years, and he gave it to Fabian, and this is the connection. Is that how it worked?
So the idea was that he was trying to figure out who do you give the watch to?
Okay.
And so he had it, and I think he was trying to go through the old channels of that from 2005 and whatnot.
Yeah.
And then when he gave it to Fabian, Fabian said, "Because this is the craziest thing. I have photos of us in the forest, and Fabian is in the photo."
Yeah.
From 20 years ago, Fabian is in the photo. So when he gave the watch to Fabian, Fabian was like, okay, we got to figure out how to get the watch back. And so that's when the contact was made. And then all of this has just unpacked itself over the last 10 months.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And yes,
Okay.
you brought it with you, and you haven't seen it yet.
No, I haven't.
You haven't seen
I
it
haven't
yet?
seen it. He's got a.
Okay. So
I think. Oh.
So Rick, this
Oh my goodness.
this was made. This was made by the people in the village of La Boissière-École, and this if you open
Oh
this
my goodness.
latch here, there's his watch.
Wow.
And on the bottom of on the base of the watch, it says Coldrey. That's inscribed on the box, on the back of the watch. And so, this is Ted's watch. And do you want me to touch this? Can I?
Yes,
okay.
please. It's okay.
So,
But
as you
the
flip,
name, 80 years, the name is perfect. You could read it.
Yeah.
I found it. Yeah.
it's remarkable.
Oh.
So, a student in France from the village of La Boissière-des-Cols did the embroidery work
Oh.
and made the box, and she wants to make contact with you. She is fascinated by this story, and what they were trying to do is figure out if the time on the watch matches when the plane crashed. But that's difficult to do. But it is. It's a 1944 Rolex Putnam watch.
Do you have her contact information?
Yes, I do.
I will I'll get it from you. I would just love to thank her for doing it. And I want to send another thank you to Fabian and the people. This is just unbelievable. I don't know what to say.
There you go. That's your watch.
You know, I think, Kathy, you can see how it's...
Beautiful.
I just don't know how it looks so good after that time. I'm not, 80 years in the woods.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
And thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know if we can, this video can go overseas in some way or something like that. I don't know how that can be done, but I'd like to thank Fabian, and I'd like to thank Morgan, and I'd like to thank Jacques, who is the person who actually found it and did the right thing, but he held on to it for a long time, but he didn't know what to do. And I so appreciative of this. That's all I can say. Thank you so much. And I'll treasure this,
It was wonderful. The best thing was that during the watch presentation, all of the students gathered around because it was something that we have been talking about for the longest time, and some of the students have been doing research on this. And there's a bit of there was a closure piece for these students, a validation of all of this work that they had done, that it culminates in Ted's watch.
Wow. This is amazing. I have to thank you too for doing this here and allowing me to be present for this too. Blake, this is full circle. He was your history teacher. Rick was your history.
Rick was my grade 7 history
Mine
teacher.
too.
Yeah.
Mine
Oh.
too.
Yeah. You know.
So I know how supportive you are of the veterans and the Legions. I know you're very supportive. You go to all of their events, and I know you're interested. And I thank you for having us.
Well, thank you for letting me be part of this. This means the world to me. Thank you very much.